Where do I even begin? Well, to be honest, since watching the initial cluster of different Cartoon Network shows growing up, such as the occasional Adventure Time and regular show, and of course the classic Ben 10, I noticed that not many of those shows really stuck with me. And I think that's because I haven't really watched these shows with a conscious mind, and really took in what they offered. As I look into the horizon, I see so many shows with such great characters and worlds, and I'm excited to delve into it all. The Steven Universe is a show I've kept my eye on for years at this point, from the hype all the way down to the songs and whatnot. I thought I should give it a go, and oh boy am I glad for getting started on such a fantastic show. Going into the series, I'd already heard from some fans of the franchise the first season, or more specifically the first 20 episodes, weren't the greatest in terms of building up the characters and the overarching main plot, and while I went through and extremely enjoyed those episodes for their light-hearted nature, wholesome moments, and of course sometimes cringe-worthy scenarios, I saw myself really just enjoying the vibe of the show. I can't really explain it properly, but the general vibe and feeling of the show is one of excellence, and it just made me really enjoy even the initial episodes. The music also really added to this, and the catchy rhymes and rhythms really added to my immersion into the world of Steven Universe. Many of the songs also give a lot of insight into the characterization of many of the characters, specifically the Crystal Gems. I think a great example of this is seen in the episode where Pearl begins to train Connie in the art of sword fighting. The song that plays as the background of the training montage, Do It For Her, really hits home the character of Pearl and what's always in her head. The experiences of Pearl are always so bubbly throughout the show, and so far as I watch through it, I only see glimpses of her entire character arc as it's slowly revealed piece by piece. The song really drives home a catchy rhythm foremost, but when you look into the lyrics and what's actually happening on screen as well, you get into the mentality of Pearl and her connection with Rose. It's amazing to see her admiration for Rose, and this song really added to that core part of her character. After that little tangent, I quickly want to touch upon world building. The world building right from the get-go was fantastic. I see some people complaining that they just want to see the main plot and that the Beach City episodes are just filler. The Beach City episodes for me have been extremely entertaining and have been able to build upon all the fantastic characters that are encapsulated in the world of Steven Universe. From Steven himself and his incredible development from the first episode of the first season until the last, we see this gradual and yet impactful character arc that continues itself masterfully through the series. Not to mention all the other characters within the plot as well, but I'll touch on that in just a second. So anyway, my first impressions of the show were incredible, and to be honest, I don't watch many shows, so this one really caught my eye, and I see myself getting excited to turn it on every episode, except say Uncle. Well, I said I was going to talk about the character development. I don't want to delve into it too deeply, as I really want to make a much longer review or analysis of the series, and I want to keep some of my premature thoughts for that video. Anyway, each Crystal Gem is so interesting with all their various motivations and backstories, and seeing each one reveal a bit of themselves excites me every time, and it makes you really feel like Steven. He's oblivious to where they all come from and what their true motivations are, so whenever we get to see the characterization and flashbacks of one of them, I get really excited. The backstories, motives, and overall character development of each of the Crystal Gems is absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to see how it goes as I progress through the show. But all I can say right now is that this has to be some of the most fun and interesting characters I've ever seen in a series. The plot itself is really interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the first 20 episodes were supposed to be a sludge, and while I didn't agree with that, in terms of the narrative, it can be felt. That will be further discussed in the next section, but the plot itself really only gets going around the 25th episode of the first season. At first, you're thinking that the plot might just revolve around a bunch of goofy and silly characters that are scattered around Beach City, while the gems are just taking down foes each day, turning it into some sort of rhythm. While that may be true for the initial episodes, the introduction of the homeworld plot really brings home the true narrative and messages of the story. The lore of the series, as some would put it, is absolutely brilliant, as we get to see why the Crystal Gems even locked out the other gems from the planet in the first place. Their adoration for the planet Earth and all of its life and people is really mesmerizing, and the heart of all the characters is brilliantly represented through every strand of the show. The Crystal Gems are the protectors of Earth, as said in the intro, and really delving into why exactly that is also really interesting, as it shouldn't really mean much to them in terms of the rest of the galaxies that they can explore, but their fascination with the planet and its people really drives the plot and their own character arcs forward, and it's super interesting to see. The homeworld plot is fantastically written as well, due to the ominous nature of of many of the characters and people that surround it, and what their true motives are. The off-world gems are really interesting, and to see why they fight to get rid of Earth is not as interesting as the motivations of the various crystal gems, but it's still brilliant nonetheless. As I've just wrapped up season 2 as well, I think I'll talk a little bit about Peridot's development. She has to have some of the most well-written and best character development in the show thus far, and her crazy motives from when we first see her rejecting her own master and actually joining the crystal gems by the end of the second season is so well done and well paced. It didn't at all feel rushed, and each step of her character arc felt like it was laid out by the writers on the team with absolute precision. She's a really interesting character, although sometimes annoying, but I don't really mind characters like her, and the more interesting nature of her learning to respect the Earth and the crystal gems for what they are really characterizes her as one of the best characters in the show from what I've watched. Quickly, let's touch base on the other characters in the Beach City area. The main ones I can pick out that have any significance are Lars, Greg, Sadie, Connie, and Ronaldo. Each one of them have their own flair, and although I may not really like Ronaldo, for example, especially in the episodes where it's only focused on him, which does get frustrating, I've also really enjoyed seeing how these characters interact with Steven himself. Quickly, Steven is an absolutely brilliant character, and the way he's able to intermingle with all the characters and even foes within the show really brings home this pacifist nature of his. His kind-hearted and trusting nature can be his downfall in some scenarios, but it really drives home what his character really represents in the grand scheme of everything. He's this huge symbol of love and kind-hearted characterization, so seeing him interact with absolutely anyone is a treat. The Beach City characters all have their own little thing, and each episode that focuses on the characterization and backstories of any of them is superb in my opinion, except the Ronaldo ones, but they are overall brilliant. The best of them all for me is of course Greg, especially the episodes where he talks about Rose and how they met is really insightful and adds to his character as well as the larger world around them. It also delves into how and why some of the characters act around Greg as they do. Moments such as the story where he recalls his friend Marty and how that helped cement him meeting Rose is one of the best episodes I've seen so far, and seeing how he interacted with a so-called alien and the way they both mingled with each other and connected despite being two completely different beings from different worlds was so well done and a huge highlight. Connie is also awesome, and her interactions with Steven has to be some of the best of any character, and how she's become an asset to the team with her incredible sword fighting skills makes her more relevant and viable than any of the other characters within the narrative that aren't Gems or Greg. Now the power system. At first it didn't seem that interesting that all the characters just had typical weapons within their gems that were plastered on their bodies, but as I watched the show and saw the different expressions and moves that could be done utilizing the multi-layered abilities of their powers, each one of them has a unique ability, but the way they are able to intermix their powers and fight against foes that they shouldn't even put up a challenge with is really fascinating, and the teamwork aspect behind most of the battles within the show is brilliant. I really like how the abilities work, and the fusions for example are also really interesting. The fact that they can multiply a gem's power while also giving them an intermix of the two gems that fused and their powers is awesome to see played out. Every time a character fused and the way that both personalities was mixed into one was really well done, and I did get a lot of enjoyment watching episodes that focus specifically on fusion, such as the one where Pearl tricks Garner into fusing with her several times. That pretty much wraps up my brief but also extensive in a way thoughts about the show, and although I've got a lot more, I'll save them for a much more cohesive video that I'd like to work on for the future once I finish the show and see my complete evaluation of it and whether it's still as good by that point. Despite the beautifully written and well-mended aspects of the show, there are a few complaints that I do have. I think one of the most common ones, which I also felt while watching, is how much build-up there is to the main homeworld plot. For the second season, I was waiting each and every single episode to see some more glimpses of Lapis and Jasper fused at the bottom of the ocean, and when it gave me a little glimpse, I'd be really excited just for it to not be shown all the way till the end of the season. In season 2, the emphasis on just building up Peridot was fantastic, but I thought they would have taken just a break for 1 or 2 episodes to show us what's going on with the homeworld plot and at least return to it for a little bit. The gaps between some of the most crucial moments of the show, filled with the Beach City episodes, which I greatly enjoy, is still ridiculous. The problem is that the show's pacing overall within the actual arcs is brilliant, and that's quite obvious when you look at some of the character arcs within the show and how they're just brilliantly executed step by step without rushing any of the specifics. But the unnecessary space as filler between each of the big and most significant arcs of the show can bring it down for someone that doesn't doesn't have much time, or someone that just doesn't like watching anything that doesn't add much to either the world building or the overarching plot that the show itself wants to tell. In the first season as well, the attention to some of the characters like Lapis are pretty much non-existent, and no mention of her for pretty much the entire second season really kills me and kills my anticipation for the character to show up, and this curiosity boiling within me to see some of these great characters is really annoying, and even that is pretty much a result of the show's sometimes wonky pacing between their arcs. And the big problem with this is that you can't just skip some of these episodes, because in the end they are still developing Steven and the Crystal Gems, so missing out on some of them may leave you a little confused with some aspects of the characters when watching another big moment in the show. Finally, some episodes within the show are just downright awful. I'd of course already heard that Say Uncle was utter garbage and should just be avoided, but me really enjoying literally every episode, even if it wasn't that brilliant to most, didn't work out there. Say Uncle killed me in the first minute, and the obnoxious nature of the crossover made me turn it off and never think about the garbage that the episode was going to entail. I feel so bad for fans that were watching it when the series aired, as it's so awful that I wouldn't even watch it even if I was deprived of all other content in terms of Steven Universe. That pretty much wraps up my complaints with the show, and overall the positives definitely beat out the negatives here, and I recommend the show to anyone who has been hesitating to watch it, such as myself. Well, that's my 2 seasons in review of the show so far. If you enjoyed this video, consider subbing to the channel and checking out any of my other content if that even remotely interests you. Of course, I will be working on a big critique once I finish the show in its entirety, and I'm really excited to see how that will turn out. If you haven't watched the show or just have been really hesitating since you don't know whether it will be good or not, just give it a go. And even though you may not enjoy the initial episodes, once you get past them, the characters, plot, music and power system of the show is so well done that I ensure you're going to have a blast, even if you've seen some negativity surrounding the show for the last couple of years. Anyway, that's all from me for today's video. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.